Today, we're going to be looking at 5 secret wealth killers that most retirees don't notice until it's too late. One of the scariest patterns that I see is retirees who think they're doing things right only to discover hidden threats after the damage has already been done. As the owner of an independent financial planning firm, we've identified a few specific wealth draining patterns that consistently catch retirees off guard, especially for those who have already been retired for several years. That's exactly why I'm making this video today, to expose 5 secret wealth killers before they have the chance to destroy your retirement. The first secret wealth killer is what we call herd mentality. Herd mentality is defined by Webster's dictionary as the tendency of people in a group to think and behave in ways that conform with others in the group rather than as individuals. Retirees frequently suffer from herd mentality. Because retiring is something you only do once, you don't get a lot of practice at actually retiring. And as a result, we naturally look to others who have retired before us or are doing so concurrent with us. And then we mimic what they do, assuming that they must have some validating information that confirms their decisions. Roth conversions are a great example of this. Imagine that you have your neighbors reminding you that tax rates are at the lowest that they've ever been and could go up. Not only that, you also have online news media constantly banging that message home. Well, it would be natural to be fearful in that scenario, and it would make Roth conversions look like a really tasty retirement planning option. So let's play out a scenario. Say you were an individual with about $1 million in pre-tax retirement accounts, things like 401ks and IRAs. You're 64 and you plan to claim Social Security at age 67. You're already retired, so your only income source for the next couple years would be portfolio withdrawals. Now, say you've calculated that withdrawing $68,000 per year for the next 3 years until Social Security kicks in would be sufficient because you know it would leave you enough after-tax money to live a comfortable retirement. Say your neighbors and online media are getting to you, and you think, well, dang, everyone around me is doing Roth conversions. I probably should too. So you're currently in this scenario in the 22% marginal federal tax bracket. So you decide to follow a Roth conversion plan that maxes out the 22% tax bracket until all your funds are Roth converted. So over the next 10 years, each year you incur an additional tax of between $14,500 and $23,400 to pay the cost of the Roth conversions year by year. Now, at the end of the 10 years, all your funds are converted, but you don't realize until after the fact that you actually won't break even on those conversions until 2050 or until your age 89. Now, the median life expectancy for men is in the mid 70s and for women, it's in the high 70s. So there are reasonable odds here that you would never actually live to the break-even age for this actual Roth conversion strategy. Not only that, the cost of the Roth conversions over those 10 years from your age 64 until your age 74 results in you having $220,000 less of spending money than you would have if you hadn't done Roth conversions because you spent that extra dollars on the cost of the conversions. Now, I'm not making a recommendation here that you should not Roth convert money. Neither am I saying that it's the wrong decision in all scenarios, but what I am saying is if you would rather have had $220,000 more spending money over the first 10 years of your retirement when you're in your best health and likely to get the most value out of it, to spend that money on things like seeing your grandkids or traveling the world or even giving to your church or your synagogue, then maybe Roth conversions would not have been the right decision for you. Now, the basic idea here is don't be a sheep, right? Don't be a part of the herd. Every financial action should be considered based on one's personal situation, not driven by fear of missing out or driven by what other people around you are doing. Now, we can only cover this specific wealth killer in so much detail here because we have to go on to the next one. Here's the thing about retirement savings, though. It's a much more complicated topic that simply can't be fully covered in one short video. So that's exactly why we've been hosting a free class this week to break down the topic of retirement planning in much more detail. Just click the first link in the description below this video to register for free. The second retirement killer is investing first and planning later. Most of us invest for our retirement first and then backtrack out what we can spend as a result of the construction of that investment portfolio. And there are serious problems with that method. The first problem is that when investing is done without being attached to our desired cash flows, we often take on either too much or too little risk with our portfolio because it's disconnected from the cash flows it has to produce. We also end up in that scenario not knowing exactly what the appropriate investment rate of return we need to seek is in order to fund the desired cash flows we have in retirement. The second problem is that if we haven't done our cash flow planning first, we often don't also understand which periods of our retirement are more sensitive to portfolio withdrawals and which time periods will be less sensitive. What I mean by this is periods of retirement where our spending needs are met only by portfolio withdrawals are more sensitive to our portfolio's value. And this is because we have no other income sources subsidizing our cost of living. An easy example of this would be if someone retires at age 62 and then decides not to claim Social Security till 67. From age 62 to 67, you would be entirely dependent on your investment portfolio for income unless you were willing to go back to work. Now, in that scenario, your withdrawal rates would almost certainly be higher for the first 5 years of retirement, but then decline substantially after Social Security kicks in. Now, the question is, does this mean you should take on more or less risk with your portfolio before Social Security? Just as with herd mentality, planning for this would be completely independent to your unique situation and no one else's. It will depend on your desired spending, how comfortable you'd be with making spending adjustments based on changes to your portfolio, but also dependent on your understanding of risks in your investments, which leads us to the third secret retirement killer, which is a misunderstanding or oversimplification of investment risk. Asset allocations make us believe that risk is binary, right? So an asset allocation has risky investments on one side and safe investments on the other side. So it's either risky or safe. Now, subconsciously, we all know this to be untrue. Nothing in life works that way. But for some reason, this still drives the investment narrative. Now, to me, it's no wonder that retirees lose sleep at night despite having the quote unquote appropriate asset allocation. A misunderstanding of risk causes us to be more susceptible to herd mentality or even to frequently take on too much risk because we don't know what we're invested in, or too little risk. Maybe we sit on the sidelines of the market thinking it's a quote-unquote risky time to invest. Let me share a quick story with you that completely reframed how I think about risk. This movie came out in 2018 called Free Solo. In this movie, a camera crew follows a rock climber named Alex Honnold as he climbs a 3,000-foot wall in Yosemite National Park with no ropes. Now, during an interview that they aired in the movie, this journalist asks Alex, "Do you have a death wish? Are you suicidal? Are you depressed? Like, tell us what gives. How could you take such flagrant risks with your life and your body?" Alex calmly responds with one of the best answers I've ever heard, and as I said earlier, it changed my life. He basically said something to the effect of, as a society, we think of risk all wrong. See, we think of it as a binary. It's either risky or it's not. But in fact, risk is a spectrum, and it really consists of two separate components that make up one whole. There is risk, which is the probability or likelihood of a bad outcome. And then there's consequence, which tells us about the magnitude or the impact of the outcome itself. Alex explained that he had climbed that particular face in Yosemite thousands of times with ropes on. Every night before he went to bed, he wrote every move that the climb would require into a journal. And then he would sit for hours and he would visualize every handhold and every foothold and every contortion of his body. He explained that to someone who's never rock climbed before, of course the route's going to appear risky. But he said for him, the climb isn't risky. It's highly consequential. Yes, one wrong move and he would fall thousands of feet to the ground and die. But it's not risky in the probabilistic sense because he understood the wall so well that the probability of consequential fall happening was very unlikely. Now, much of other things in life are the same, and investing in this case is very much the same. There are data sets and trackable metrics that can tell us the risk or the probability or likelihood of a bad outcome with a set of investments. But just because there might be a bad outcome doesn't mean that the consequence of that bad outcome will be high. We don't know anything about the magnitude just by knowing something about the likelihood. Now, conversely, there are data sets that can tell us about the consequence or the impact or magnitude of an outcome with regard to a specific set of investments. And again, just because the consequence could be large doesn't tell us anything about how likely that actual event is to happen. So reframing how we understand risk and then educating ourselves how to measure risk versus consequence can help retirees be more proactive about their investment strategy, but also to sleep better at night because they understand what their money is actually exposed to. Now, with this third wealth killer, I could again make an entire series of videos discussing the subject, and I likely will. But because we have to move on to the next two, we're going to be hosting a free class this week where we break down some of these topics in more detail to help you better plan for your retirement. Again, click the link in the description below to register for free. The fourth secret retirement killer is building your retirement plan yourself. See, choosing to build a retirement plan oneself is a reactive orientation that frequently results in problems later down the line that then need triaging. Building a retirement plan oneself would be like diagnosing one's own health using WebMD, only to later realize that there were gaps in the diagnosis that led to real health concerns that would need to be addressed by a doctor later. Now, going to the doctor after symptoms appear makes it much harder to triage and solve a problem, and often results in some kind of dependency for life, usually on a drug or a rehab treatment or something of that nature. And in my opinion, the same is true with retirement planning. You don't get do-overs with money just as you don't get do-overs with your health. Therefore, being more proactive about your retirement planning and seeking qualified help before you find out there's a problem makes the most sense in my eyes. And this really leads to the fifth retirement killer, which is avoiding your finances altogether. Paying attention to your finances too late in life leads to missing critical deadlines. And I'm not just talking about things like claiming Social Security or performing required minimum distributions or enrolling in Medicare on time. I'm also referring to things like adjusting your savings behaviors in time to arrive at retirement with the right amount of funds to fund your retirement. Or I'm talking about things like adjusting your portfolio to reduce or increase risk with enough timeline that that portfolio adjustment can actually have an impact. Avoiding our finances until our backs are against a wall, either because we have a serious financial problem that now needs life support, or because we have a looming retirement deadline due to forced layoffs at work, is really one of the worst scenarios to find yourself in. Hopefully, watching a video like this one today can help provide some confidence that there is the information out there to help you plan your retirement in a proactive manner. Now that you know the silent wealth killers that could hurt your retirement, you need to understand one final thing. These financial blind spots are just the beginning of what can erode your retirement savings. Between required minimum distributions and healthcare cost spikes, tax bracket complications, we have found that proper planning before retirement and early into retirement can shield you from the wealth destruction that happens to many retirees before they even notice it. If you want to learn more about protecting your retirement from those wealth killers and many other things, we're hosting a free masterclass this week. Just click the link in the description to register and learn the exact strategies we use to help our clients shield their wealth. Thanks so much as always for your time and attention, and I'll see you in the next video.